Hi, PerspectaWeather.com meteorologist Paul Doreen here on Wednesday, November 6th. A very interesting weather pattern shaping up for the next week or so. We have not one but two cold blasts coming to the mid-Atlantic region, the northeast U.S. One arrives Thursday night, Friday time frame, and then another one, a widespread cold air outbreak, arrives in the eastern states by the early part of next week. There will be rain changing to snow in the interior sections of the mid-Atlantic region and northeastern U.S. in the Thursday night, early Friday time frame. Places like western New York State all the way up to upper Maine could get accumulating snow out of this, and there can be even some snow shower activity all the way into the I-95 corridor. But the bigger story with this first cold blast, at least here in the mid-Atlantic region, in the northeastern U.S., the coastal sections, will be the cold as opposed to the snow. Now, early next week, another cold blast, and indeed there is a snow threat with that cold blast in the early to middle part of next week. We'll kind of talk about that, set the stage for that over the next few minutes. First of all, here's the current 5-day forecast map of the average 850 millibar temperature anomalies. This is, again, the current 5-day period we're in. And we have a persistent polar jet stream pushing cold air masses from way up in Canada down across the Great Lakes and into the mid-Atlantic region and northeast U.S. And again, the next big cold air outbreak arrives Thursday night, Friday time frame for the mid-Atlantic and northeastern part of the country. Quite amazingly, another even more widespread and perhaps even colder air mass will arrive during the early part of next week. Let's take a look at the 850 millibar temperature anomalies for days 6 to 10. And here it is, quite an amazing look. It continues the pattern that we've had since the beginning of the month here, with the eastern two-thirds of the nation below normal and out in the western states above normal temperatures. But this is a very cold-looking air mass that again arrives in the eastern states around Monday of next week. And this is days 6 through 10, the average temperature anomaly at 850 millibars for that 5-day period that extends from November 11th, which is Monday, Veterans Day, all the way to November 16th. Well, let's take a look at last night's 6Z GFS model run in terms of the 500 millibar height anomalies. And we'll kind of talk about, set the stage for what I'll be looking for over the next few days in terms of the potential of accumulating snow next week in the mid-Atlantic region and northeast U.S. associated with that second blast of cold air. Here we start off the day, basically a west to east flow this morning, riding across the mid-Atlantic region, the Midwest. But then as we push forward here, we'll see this upper level low right in here kind of intensify over the Great Lakes. And that is about where the cold frontal system lies late Thursday night going into early Friday morning. Right in here is upper level wave number 1 associated with the initial blast of cold air that arrives again in the mid-Atlantic region and northeast U.S. Thursday night and Friday. Friday itself will be a windy day, perhaps wind gusts up to 30 miles per hour or so, way below normal temperatures for this time of the year. And again, with the influx of the cold air, there will be a changeover to snow in interior sections of the mid-Atlantic region and interior sections of the northeast U.S. and places like western New York State, all the way, all the way up to upper part of Maine can get accumulating snow, and there can even be some snow shower activity all the way into the I-95 corridor region late Thursday night before the precipitation comes to an end. Let's now move forward here. The weekend starts off quite cold. In fact, temperatures way down in the 20s in many spots Friday night, early Saturday morning. And here we are on Saturday. Ridge starts to pop up across the northwestern U.S. And watch what happens here with this next cold blast. This is a key feature here that we'll watch over the next few days. By the end of the weekend, it's sitting over south central Canada, a vigorous wave of energy in the upper part of the atmosphere. Exactly how far to the south and east this digs will dictate how much snow we may get here in the mid-Atlantic region or northeast U.S. during the early to middle part of next week. In fact, there's very likely to be a digging farther to the south and east of this initial blast at the end of the work week. Remember, we saw the upper level low with that, mainly confined to New England, southeastern Canada. But watch what happens here. This is, again, one model run from the GFS. It dives to the south and east. And with this kind of an orientation here by the middle part of next week, that raises the possibility of some accumulating snow in the Mid-Atlantic region, northeast U.S., somewhere in the early to middle part time period of next week. And again, cold air is coming, that's for sure, for this early part of next week. With the cold frontal passage, probably Sunday night, Monday morning time frame in the eastern part of the U.S. and a very widespread cold air outbreak for the early and middle part of next week for much of the eastern half of the nation. And again, there's the potential for snow depending on the movement of this upper level feature. Well, now let's take a look at the operational run of the 6Z GFS, and this now does have a snow threat for next week. Last night's run earlier yesterday did not. European model has kind of flipped around. Nothing is set in stone yet. We're still 6 or 7 days away from this potential snow event next week, but again, we pointed out some of the features we'll watch, mainly that upper level energy. Starting off today, high pressure in control. Let's move forward here, and again, we have this initial blast of cold air. Here's cold blast number 1 with the high pressure by tomorrow afternoon centered over the Central Plains. A cold Canadian high. Notice a lot of moisture riding up along that frontal boundary zone. The colder air is pushing to the south and east, and this moisture is pushing to the north and east. And it will become cold enough for the rain to change over to snow in the interior section, far interior sections of the Mid-Atlantic and New England, northeastern U.S. as well. And again, there can be some snow shower activity at the end of this precipitation event in the I-95 corridor region, late Thursday night, early Friday morning. But expect accumulating snow from perhaps northwestern PA, western New York, all the way up to the upper part of Maine. And then as we get into the day on Friday, this pressure gradient tightens up between the departing low and this high over the middle part of the nation. Strong northwest winds, perhaps north winds as well mixed in here, north to northwest, gusting up to 25 or 30 miles per hour. Quite cold for this time of the year. And again, temperatures Friday night way down in the 20s in the Mid-Atlantic region and northeast U.S. And then we move ahead through the weekend, a chilly weekend, a little bit milder on Sunday compared to Saturday, but a dry weekend as well in the Mid-Atlantic region. Here we go, the beginnings. This is now late Saturday night going into Sunday morning. And here we go with this outbreak of Arctic air arriving in the northern plains. Just look at this pressure gradient pattern here. This means business, this next cold air outbreak, early part of next week. Let's move forward here. Anchored by very strong high pressure, 1049 millibar high pressure in southwestern Canada comes Sunday night. Screaming north winds in the northern plains, bringing this very, very cold air for this time of the year, for any time of the year, by the early part of next week. And then we see a lot of moisture starting to form here in this particular run of the GFS model. And again, things will bounce back and forth in the models over the next few days. Nothing is set in stone yet, but there is the potential is there. Watch this cold air intrusion into the Midwest on Monday. Cold front arrives on Monday in the eastern U.S. and depending on the movement of that upper level energy will dictate if there is accumulating snow in the Mid-Atlantic region, northeast U.S. associated with next week's cold blast, and it certainly is on the table. One other thing I want to point out here, look at these thickness values here. This is a 504 thickness, 498 thickness here across southeastern Canada as of next Tuesday night, with a snowstorm raging according to this model run in the Mid-Atlantic region and northeast U.S. Thickness values here represent the thickness of the bottom half of the atmosphere, 1,000 millibar to 500 millibar layer. That's basically the bottom half of the atmosphere, and the thickness of that layer in the atmosphere is well correlated with temperatures. Basically, the lower the thickness, the lower the temperatures. 540 thickness is kind of a magical line that meteorologists use in order to determine a rain-snow line. It's closely associated with the rain-snow line in a given storm event. So the 540 line begins the blue dashing here, whereas the 546 is the red dashing, and anything higher than that in terms of thickness will be red, anything lower will be blue, lower than 540. When you see thickness values of 504 or even 498 any time of the year, that is very, very cold air. But for the middle part of November, it's really remarkable. Not only do you see the potential of accumulating snow, not unprecedented, but quite incredible indeed, but this widespread, very, very cold air mass for this time of the year. Again, we're talking about the middle part of November. Let me end by saying it certainly is not unprecedented. In fact, it was just 1 year ago, November 15th, that we had a snowstorm. Philadelphia, New York City. It was one of those unfortunate timing situations where everybody got into work, then the snow began, and the evening rush hour in the Philly, New York City metro regions turned out to be a nightmare, with several inches of snow, up to about 7 or 8 inches in some of the suburbs of Philadelphia all the way to New York City. Again, that was last November 15th, so certainly this is within the realm of possibility, and we'll focus in on that over the next few days, of course. But regardless of whether it snows next week, in terms of accumulations here in the mid-Atlantic and northeast U.S., the cold is coming in 2 waves. One arrives Thursday night, Friday, the next one early next week. That's it for now. For PerspectaWeather.com, I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.